Good evening and welcome to a deep exploration of the most claustrophobic and hopeless nightmares ever put to paper. Tonight we are going to look at 3 specific stories from Stephen King's collection Skeleton Crew that deal with the concept of having absolutely no escape. We are looking at the Jaunt, the Raft, and Survivor type. These are stories about people pushed into corners, physical corners, mental corners, and geographical corners, where the only way out is death or madness. We aren't looking at heroes overcoming odds tonight. We are looking at what happens when the odds are impossible. If you enjoy this kind of long-form breakdown of horror literature and want to see more content like this, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a like on the video. It really helps us keep making these deep dives. Before we begin, I have a question for you to answer in the comments section below. If you were trapped in a situation where you had to choose between physical pain and total mental isolation, which one do you think would break you first? Let me know your answer in the comments. Part 1. The Jaunt. Eternity in a blink. There are prisons built of stone and steel, and then there are prisons built of time. Infinite, crushing time locked inside a single nanosecond. Stephen King's The Jaunt explores the latter, presenting a technological miracle that solves humanity's resource crisis, while introducing a metaphysical horror so profound it snaps the human mind like a dry twig. We begin in the not-so-distant future, at the Port Authority Terminal in New York. The setting is classic King, the mundane mixed with the miraculous. The terminal is described as gungy and frightening, proving that even 300 years in the future, public transit remains a gritty, uncomfortable experience. Here we meet the Oates family, Mark, his wife Marilys, and their 2 children, Ricky and Patty, waiting for Jaunt 701 to Mars. It's a routine trip for the dad, Mark, but a terrifying first for the rest of the family. The tension in the blue concourse is palpable. King uses this waiting period to frame the narrative, allowing Mark to distract his nervous family by recounting the history of the Jaunt itself. It's a clever narrative device, juxtaposing the sanitized, carpeted lounge and its soothing colors with the chaotic, messy origins of the technology they are about to trust with their lives. Mark takes us back to 1987, introducing us to the eccentric scientist Victor Carroon. This backstory is crucial because it grounds the sci-fi concept in the desperation of the late 20th century, an era of gas shortages and geopolitical tension. Carroon is the archetype of the mad genius, working out of a renovated barn, running on caffeine and desperation. The discovery of teleportation happens, as these things often do in literature, by accident. Carroon isn't trying to transport matter, he's playing with ion guns and cloud chambers. But when he accidentally teleports his own fingers across the barn, the world changes. This is where the lore deepens. King emphasizes the seamlessness of the physical transfer. A pencil goes through, it comes out the other side. A watch goes through, it keeps perfect time. Physically, the Jaunt is flawless. It's a lifeline for a world running out of oil, eventually shifting the global economy from petroleum to water exportation from Mars and Venus. But the biological element, the organic effect, is where the nightmare hides. Mark describes Carroon's experiments with white mice, and this is the first red flag that something is fundamentally wrong with the process. The mice that go through come out physically intact, but mentally shattered. They behave strangely, catatonic or dead upon arrival. The text offers a chilling description of a mouse that goes through and simply stops acting like a living creature, dying moments later. It's not that their bodies are broken, it's that the spark of life has been snuffed out by an inexplicable trauma. The mystery compels Carroon to push further, sending a goldfish through, which survives only to die later, and eventually, inevitably, human subjects, but not before the government steps in. Here, the commentary on bureaucracy is sharp. The government takes over, sanitizes the history, and turns Carroon into a friendly grandfather figure for the history books, masking the eccentric reality. But they can't mask the problem of the Jaunt effect. The narrative takes a darker turn as Mark explains the breakthrough. They discovered that a conscious living being cannot jaunt. If a mouse is anesthetized, it wakes up fine. If it's awake, it dies or goes insane. The explanation Mark gives his son, Ricky, is the philosophical core of the story. It's not just teleportation, it's a disconnect between the body and the mind. The body travels physically in 67 trillionths of a second, virtually instant. But consciousness doesn't particulate, it doesn't break down, it sits in the void. To illustrate this horror, Mark tells the story of Rudy Foggia, a convicted murderer offered a pardon if he takes the jaunt wide awake. This is the law's patient zero. Foggia steps in, a young man. He steps out a fraction of a second later, physically unchanged, but with snow-white hair and the demeanor of an ancient senile wreck. His final words before dying of massive shock are the key to the entire nightmare. It's eternity in there. This concept creates a sense of vertigo. Imagine being a disembodied mind, floating in a sea of pure white nothingness, with absolutely no sensory input for what feels like 1 billion years, all while your body takes less than a second to travel. The mind, left to its own devices for an eternity, turns on itself. It cannibalizes its own sanity. It's a fate far worse than death. It is solitary confinement stretched to infinity. Mark even touches on the urban legends of the Jaunt, adding layers to the world-building. He mentions a man named Lester Michelson who murdered his wife by pushing her into the Jaunt portal, but hitting the kneel button, erasing the destination. The horror here is existential. She isn't dead in the traditional sense. She's essentially jaunting forever, suspended in that white void, screaming in a limbo that never ends. It's a terrifying casual aside that deepens the dread hanging over the Oates family. As the story returns to the present, the attendants are administering the sleeping gas. The procedure is routine, sanitized and safe, but King plants the seeds of disaster in the character of Ricky. Ricky is 12, adventurous and curious. He's the kid who climbs the highest trees and takes the biggest dares. Throughout the father's story, Ricky hasn't just been listening, he's been calculating. The concept of the long jaunt doesn't scare him, it fascinates him. He wants to know what it looks like. The climax is a masterclass in sudden, visceral horror. The family takes the gas. Mark goes under, drifting into the velvet dark. He wakes up at Whitehead City on Mars. The physical journey is over, but the atmosphere in the recovery room is wrong. There are screams. Mark sees his wife, Marilis, collapsing in horror. Then he sees his son. The reveal is grotesque. The thing on the gurney is no longer a 12-year-old boy. Ricky held his breath. He fought the gas. He went into the jaunt awake. The physical description reflects the psychological devastation. The boy's hair has turned snow-white, just like Foggia's. But it's the eyes that convey the true horror. Incredibly ancient, jaundiced, yellowed with an age that defies human comprehension. The creature that was once Ricky is cackling with an obscene glee, bouncing on the couch. His mind has endured millions, perhaps billions of years of isolation. He has solved the riddle of the jaunt, but the price was his humanity. His screaming words confirm the worst fears of the narrative. Longer than you think, Dad. Longer than you think. He confirms that he saw, but the sheer weight of that eternity has shattered him completely. In a final act of madness, confirming that the mind cannot endure such a violation of natural law, the ancient child uses his own hands to claw his eyes out, trying to erase the vision of the forever void. King leaves us with Mark Oates joining the chorus of screams, the realization crashing down that his son has been trapped in a timeless hell while they slept. The jaunt serves as a brutal reminder that technology can conquer space, but time and the human mind's perception of it remains an unconquerable, dangerous frontier. There is no escape from the prison of your own consciousness when the clock stops ticking. Part 2. The Raft, the Stain on the Water. If the Jaunt is about the terror of the infinite void, the Raft brings horror back to a visceral, claustrophobic reality. This isn't about high technology or the far future. It's about the primal, stupid mistakes of youth and a monster that defies biology. King sets the stage with a classic trope: 4 college students on an impulsive joyride. It's October in Pennsylvania, the transition season where the warmth of summer is dying out, replaced by the biting chill of autumn. This setting is crucial. The isolation of Cascade Lake is absolute. The summer cottages are empty, the docks are pulled in, and the water is dangerously cold. The group dynamic is built on the friendship between Randy and Deke. Randy is the academic, the Pancho to Deke's Cisco. Deke is the alpha, the football hero, the guy for whom life is effortless. He's the unstoppable force. Accompanying them are Rachel and Laverne. The decision to swim out to the solitary wooden raft floating 40 yards offshore is fueled by beer, bravado, and that specific type of collegiate immortality complex, where death is just an abstract concept. As they swim out, King introduces the anomaly immediately. Randy spots a black patch on the water. It looks like an oil slick, but the physics are all wrong. It's circular, compact, and it floats with a purposeful buoyancy. It doesn't streak or spread. It holds its shape. This is our first law insight into the creature. It mimics the environment but fails to perfectly replicate the randomness of nature. It's a predator wearing camouflage that doesn't quite fit. Panic sets in almost immediately after they board the raft. The slick pursues them. It's not drifting on a current. It has agency. It surrounds their wooden island, cutting off escape. Here, King subverts the monster in the woods trope. They aren't being hunted by a slasher or a beast they can fight. They are besieged by a substance. The first casualty is Rachel. This scene establishes the creature's primary weapon: hypnosis. As Rachel stares at the black matte surface, she begins to see colors, swirling, mesmerizing spirals of gold and vermilion. The creature lures its prey not with aggression, but with beauty. King describes her trance state by comparing her to Sandy Duncan on a box of crackers, a frozen, wholesome image about to be defiled. When she touches the surface, the trap snaps. The analysis here is terrifying. The creature doesn't bite. It dissolves. It flows over her arm like mud, and instantly the skin is gone. The text describes the limb looking like a rolled roast of beef, tendons and red meat exposed. There is no fight, only consumption. The creature pulls her in, and the description of her screaming face being curtained by the black ooze is nightmare fuel. It digests her bone, blood, and soul in minutes, expanding in size as it feeds. The psychological horror deepens as the temperature drops. The trio is trapped on a few square feet of wood, half-naked, freezing, with a sentient acid circling them. Deke, the man of action, is paralyzed by the lack of an enemy he can punch or tackle. This is where the story deconstructs the jock archetype. Deke's physical strength is useless against a fluid enemy. The creature displays intelligence. It stops drifting aimlessly and starts testing the raft's defenses. It realizes it can squeeze. The death of Deke is perhaps one of the most gruesome sequences King has ever penned. The creature slips underneath the boards and waits. When Deke steps on a crack between the planks, a space no wider than half an inch, the creature grabs his foot. The physics of this kill are what make it truly horrific. A human body cannot fit through a half-inch crack. The creature doesn't care. It pulls with immense hydraulic force. Randy and Laverne try to pull Deke up, creating a tug-of-war with a human wishbone. The law implications here are staggering. The creature possesses strength that defies leverage. It essentially extrudes Deke through the wood. The pressure is so immense that blood jets from Deke's ears and eyes like a human fire hydrant. He is squeezed like a tube of toothpaste until his structure collapses, his bones splintering, pulled down into the dark water. The final image of Deke is his class ring sliding off his finger, the only part of him that wouldn't fit. The alpha male, the hero, is reduced to pulp, proving that in King's world vitality offers no protection against the unnatural. Now, only Randy and Laverne remain. The dynamic shifts to pure survival instinct, warring with biological needs. They are freezing to death. To conserve warmth, they huddle together. King intertwines the drive for life, eros, with the presence of death, thanatos. They engage in a desperate, almost mechanical sexual act, not out of passion, but as a frantic affirmation of life in the face of the void. But the creature is patient. It uses their distraction. Randy, in the throes of sensation, stares at the water and begins to see the colors. The creature captures his attention, dragging his mind into the swirl. It's a seduction. While Randy is entranced, the creature strikes at Laverne. It grabs her by the hair. The horror here is Randy's passivity. He is so mentally broken, so exhausted, that when the creature drags Laverne over the side, he pushes her. He sacrifices her to buy himself a moment of safety. It's a moment of supreme cowardice and realism, the brain surviving by discarding his humanity. The story ends with Randy alone on the raft. Morning comes, but there is no rescue. He is hallucinating, the cold and the trauma shattering his mind. The creature remains, floating nearby, a patient, dark checker on the board. The ending is ambiguous but grim. Randy stares at the creature, and the colors return. The creature seems to communicate telepathically, asking a single, nonsensical, yet terrifying question. Do you love? It's a question that mocks the human condition. It implies the creature consumes not just flesh, but emotion and connection. Randy, broken and alone, begins to sing, surrendering to the colors. The implication is clear. He won't starve or freeze. He will give in. He will let the beauty take him. The Raft posits that when faced with an incomprehensible, unstoppable force, the human mind will eventually choose madness and submission over the terror of resistance. The black patch on the water isn't just a monster. It's an eraser, wiping these kids out of existence one by one, leaving nothing but a pristine lake and an empty raft. Part 3. Survivor Type. The ultimate patient. If the Jaunt is cosmic horror and the Raft is a creature feature, Survivor Type is a descent into the absolute darkest recess of the human psyche. This is body horror stripped of all supernatural elements, presented through the clinical, terrifyingly pragmatic lens of a disgraced surgeon. The entire story is framed as a diary found in a waterproof lifeboat log, written by Richard Pine, born Richard Pinzetti. This backstory is not filler. It is the psychological scaffolding for everything that follows. Pine is a hustler. He clawed his way out of New York's Little Italy, changing his name to sound less ethnic, cutting corners and selling prescription pads to pushers. He views life as a zero-sum game where the only rule is survival. He is arrogant, cynical, and deeply resentful of authority. He is the survivor type of the title, someone who will do absolutely anything to stay alive. King establishes this character so we understand that what happens next isn't madness. At least, not at first. It's calculation. Pine finds himself shipwrecked on a tiny barren island in the Pacific, a spit of rock barely 200 paces wide. He has no food, he has limited water, but he has a waterproof case containing 2 kilograms of pure, high-grade heroin he was smuggling. The irony is staggering. He possesses a fortune that is utterly worthless, a king's ransom on a rock, where the only currency is calories. The narrative structure uses the diary format to track the degradation of Pine's mind. Early entries are cogent, arrogant, and analytical. He obsessively recounts a question from his medical school days, posed by a professor named Mockridge. How much shock trauma can the patient stand? The answer, reduced to its base level, is How badly does the patient want to survive? This question becomes the mantra of the story, the beat to which Pine marches toward hell. The turning point is an injury. In a frantic attempt to signal a passing plane, Pine fractures his ankle. It's a compound fracture, bone through skin. On a deserted island, this is a death sentence. Gangrene is inevitable. Starvation is already setting in. A normal man would lie down and die. Pine, however, is a surgeon. He has the tools, a sharp knife, a sewing kit, and matches for sterilization. And he has the heroin. The law here twists the concept of drug addiction. Pine isn't an addict initially. He uses the heroin as a surgical anesthetic. He snorts it to numb the agony of the break. But as the hunger gnaws at him, the surgeon's logic takes a detour into the macabre. He realizes he has a gangrenous limb that will kill him and a stomach that is empty. He solves both problems with one stroke of the knife. The amputation scene is described with a chilling lack of emotion. He operates on himself, high on heroin, watching the sunset. But it's the aftermath that defines the horror. He doesn't just remove the foot to save his life. He eats it to sustain it. He washes it first. This detail, washing the severed foot before consuming it, is the peak of King's psychological insight. It shows that Pine is still clinging to the rituals of civilization and hygiene, even as he commits the ultimate taboo of autocannibalism. He describes it as tasting like cold roast beef. As the days blur, the diary entries become shorter, more fragmented. The heroin stops being just a painkiller and becomes a way to endure the unendurable. The horror of survivor type is the feedback loop. Pine cuts off a part of himself to feed the rest of himself, but the trauma requires more heroin and the healing requires more energy, necessitating more food. He becomes a self-consuming machine. He amputates the other leg at the knee, then the thigh. The text creates a horrifying image of a man whittling himself down, literally reducing his physical form to keep the consciousness alive. He begins to view his body not as self, but as a larder, a supply of meat. He hallucinates hearing the voices of his past, his father, and the priest who warned him about mortal sins. Pine laughs at them. He believes he is winning. He believes he is outsmarting death. The commentary on the hands is vital here. Pine is obsessed with his hands. Throughout his life, he protected them, soaked them, cared for them because they were his ticket to success as a surgeon. Now they are the butchers. He protects them to the very end because they are the tools of his self-destruction. He cannot eat his hands because then he cannot operate. It is a tragic, sick irony. By the final entries, the prose disintegrates. The articulate surgeon is gone, replaced by a creature of pure instinct and drug-induced delirium. He has eaten his ears. He is a torso and a head, dragging himself across the guano-stained rocks. The formatting of the text reflects this dissolution. Words trail off. Sentences are unfinished. The ending is one of the most famous in horror literature. Pine, delirious, starving, and stoned beyond comprehension, looks at his own hands, the hands he prized above all else. The final entry is a fragmented, incoherent scrawl. Lady fingers, they taste just like lady fingers. King leaves us with the realization that Pine has finally crossed the last line. He has begun to eat the very tools of his survival. The survivor type has survived everything, including his own humanity, only to end as a mouth chewing on itself in the dark. It answers the professor's question with a terrifying finality. The patient can stand anything, provided he is willing to consume himself to do it. The story suggests that true survival, stripped of all morality and sanity, is indistinguishable from total destruction. Richard Pine didn't survive the island. He digested himself into oblivion. If you've got the stomach for more deep dives into the abyss, hit that subscribe button. It's the only way to ensure you don't get left behind in the void. I'll see you in the next one. Try to stay awake.